Thousands upon thousands of Sho were seated around the central pillar as they prayed to the source. The sections, rings of seated Sho, looked like the sea on the windiest winter's day, as they moved to the rhythms of their prayers. The revelers swayed from left to right and rolled forward and back as they sang the old hymns and offered their wishes. Fashye hopped and clapped as it hit her that she would be able to take part in it all. She paused to absorb every last bit of the scene. The chamber was larger than any other temple on the planet. It was dim as only a few rays of morning starlight fell through the 5 oculi high in the ceiling. The sweet fragrance of incense made from resins and petals of northern flowering vines permeated the chamber. A fine, lingering fog dimmed the far sides. This incense was itself a kind of tangible prayer. It was a hint at the mysteries of the source. All was familiar, yet not completely concrete. The sight overwhelmed Fashye. It sent her backpedaling. Her hands pressed against her eyes as she fell into another prayer right there. It was one of thanks to the Sho for coming to the temple. Fashye could see the children had already taken their place at the center. Unlike the rest of the congregation, they looked away from the pillar and out towards the elderly. The elders were seated near the children to present themselves. They were dressed in white silks, and gray linen cloths draped from their foreheads to cover their faces. It was a lesson for both, and one of the more important ones taught in the faith. A life begins feeble and near to the source, the unknown void where all things come from. It ventures out to experience, to create, destroy, or assimilate depending on the choices of the living. Choice continues until the life is once again feeble and near to the source. The cloths were to teach the children that they may not know what kind of person they will become. "So wonderful!" Fashye sang out. Behind the elderly were those who were more distant from the source. Adolescents, adults, even a few non-Sho adherents rested on plain cushions. Some sat respectfully on their knees, while others rested lazily with legs crossed. Most were praying with rhythmic movements of their hands that kept tempo with other Sho's dances and with the priest's songs. They moved with the words as they echoed from the far walls. Good, 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 good. Fashye pressed her hands to her eyes yet again to thank all that she could that she was allowed to see such a beautiful event. She repeated the prayer another 3 times, thanking the people for coming, thanking them for their beautiful thoughts, and thanking them for making such a wonderful memory. How could the other Thesum want to miss it? Crazy! This was the final act of centuries of development, the recognition of the Tse Imsja, the first union, the long war, the first council. Everything that marked the living presence of the Sho had led to this single moment. In many ways, this gathering was as important as the actual migration. "Well," she groaned, "the others won't come. Then I will remember it for them." Fashye hurried to the nearest set of stairs. It was packed with Sho on their way to their seats. On either side were the priests and nuns, husbands and wives married twice, to the faith and to each other. They were among the small number of Sho or Tse that still practiced the old union. Fashye squeaked, thrilled that she could see them again. Each one held a silken container full of white sand taken from Shinem's coasts. As the revelers and adherents descended, they would be showered with handfuls. The holy couples would sing out in prayer as they doused the people to cleanse them of illness, anger, and greed. It would also tie them to their homeland so they could never forget it. "Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful," Fashye sang. Out of instinct she pressed her fingers to her eyes in gratitude again and again. She then quickly bounced down the steps until she came behind 3 other women. A nun to her right took a handful of the sand. "We see you," the nun cracked out. "You have our futures in your eyes." Then she scooped a handful of sand from her pouch and brought it to her forehead. It was a blessing. Fashye loved to receive them. She loved to give them more because that hurt less. The particles clung to the nun's black veil. It was already specked with grains. With a smooth swish of her wrist, she threw the handful at Fashye. Fashye closed her eyes just as the sand struck against her shoulder and cheek. It stung. It felt horrible. No, make it good. It felt great. She was of Shinnim, and Shinnim was of her. It hurt and felt great. I don't know which one, she giggled. To her left, the priest squawked, "In the manner of our ancestors, you leave for the betterment of all things." More sand struck her. From all directions, the nuns and priests doused her as they chanted their various blessings. 2 steps down, and a nun threw a glob at her face. Fashye stumbled back 2 steps. "To keep your health and your eyes." "I think I can still see," she laughed. A priest extended his hand just in front of her. "Look here," he ordered. "What is it?" Fashye shouted, unable to contain herself. She leaned close to see what he was holding. It had to be wonderful. A shower of sand poured onto her head. The priest had tricked her. Fashye froze, peeking to her left to see his wife after she dumped a whole pouch onto her head. It was a prayer for Fashye to keep her humor. Ah, I get it," she laughed. She glared at the nun. "Did you get it all on me?" She checked. Yes, I did." "Good." Fashye moved down another step. Another nun slung a handful of sand at her belly. "Oof." "For your fine child." "Maybe," Fashye laughed. She was still years away from that. Fashye continued for several minutes until she reached her section. Blessings came in shouts. Sand came in an endless series of bursts. Fashye loved every minute of it. The beautiful faith, she thought. It was so wonderful. Her seat was not too far from the stairs. Only three backless chairs separated her from her own. They were unoccupied. It was unfortunate. Fashye preferred to pray with others. Offering her prayer while others offered theirs made the words more potent. She felt that the stronger the prayers were, the more likely they were to affect the world. She brushed stray sand away from her clothes and her hair. Her shawl was heavy with bunches caught in the folds. She was quick to dump it all out. Much of the floor was already covered, so a little more wouldn't be an issue. She lifted her sash. A fist-sized pile plopped to the ground. "It can take a lot more," she smirked. Now, with a quick drop to her knees, she adjusted the cushion so it would be just right. A little to the left. No, more to the right. Back. No, forward. Diagonally forwards and back, perhaps upside down. "Isa!" she breathed lovingly. "Hello." It was perfect. The front of the cushion crested the raised seating ring, meaning she could sit that much closer to the pillar. She slid her shoes from her feet, jumped onto the cushion, and then rested on her knees. Fashye took a frame and a half to consider what she might ask for. In between meetings, in her private moments, she constantly thought about what she would say. She agonized over the particulars. Which dialect should she use? What posture? When should she pause? Of course, she would ask the memory and the source for guidance in the endeavor. However, she would not visit this temple again. It was vital that she say the correct prayer. Her golden string would be the perfect beginning. Fashye sang the first line of her new prayer. She reached into her shawl's pocket to retrieve her golden string, her most treasured possession. She felt nothing.